bank robberies require careful planning, precise timing, and flawless execution to succeed. Then there are these criminal masterminds, who proved that some people shouldn't be trusted with planning a grocery store trip, let alone a federal crime. These are real stories about would-be bank robbers whose brilliant schemes collapsed faster than their criminal careers. 1. One ambitious criminal walked into First National Bank wearing a ski mask and demanding money, but forgot that ski masks are suspicious in July and that banks have security cameras recording suspicious behavior. His disguise plan backfired when the teller immediately pressed the silent alarm while he stood at the counter trying to explain that he wasn't robbing the bank, just wearing a ski mask for personal reasons. Security footage showed him spending 4 minutes attempting to convince bank staff that masked customers were normal while police surrounded the building outside. He was eventually arrested while still arguing that his ski mask was a fashion choice rather than a robbery disguise, and his mugshot became a local police department favorite, showing a man in full winter gear during summer heat. 2. A would-be robber planned what she thought was the perfect bank heist, but executed it at a closed bank branch, spending 20 minutes trying to force open doors that were locked because the bank was closed for renovations. She had researched the bank's layout, security systems, and cash schedules, but somehow missed the large, temporarily closed signs and construction barriers surrounding the building. Construction workers discovered her attempting to break windows on a building that contained no money, no employees, and no operating banking equipment. Police arrested her for attempting to rob a construction site, and workers reported that she had asked them where all the bank employees were hiding and when they would return with the money. 3. A brilliant disguise plan led one robber to wear a fake beard and mustache that began falling off during his robbery announcement, creating a trail of facial hair across the bank floor as he approached the teller window. His disguise was so poorly applied with what appeared to be school glue that customers initially thought he was a street performer or birthday party entertainer who had wandered into the wrong building. The teller was too confused by his disintegrating disguise to understand his robbery demands, and security cameras recorded him attempting to reattach facial hair while repeating, "This is a robbery," to increasingly bewildered bank staff. By the time police arrived, he was completely clean-shaven and surrounded by fake hair evidence that had fallen off during his criminal announcement. 4. Another criminal mastermind wrote her robbery demands on the back of her own personal check, complete with her name, address, phone number, and account information, clearly printed for the teller's convenience. She handed the teller a note demanding money while simultaneously providing complete identification and contact information that eliminated any mystery about the robbery suspect's identity. She apparently thought using her own stationery would make the robbery seem more professional and official, not realizing that bank robberies typically avoid providing personal identification to victims and witnesses. The teller initially thought it was some kind of banking joke or customer service test, until the woman became insistent that this was an actual robbery attempt using her own banking materials as evidence. 5. One robber's elaborate getaway plan involved his bicycle, which he had chained to a bike rack outside the bank for security while committing the robbery inside. After demanding money from tellers, he rushed outside to discover he couldn't remember his bike lock combination and didn't have bolt cutters to free his getaway vehicle. He spent 15 minutes trying different lock combinations while police arrived and found him struggling with his own security measures. Officers discovered him still trying to unlock his bicycle, having successfully prevented his own escape through excellent bike security, and he was arrested while explaining to police that he had chosen a very secure lock to prevent bike theft during his bank robbery. 6. A particularly poorly timed robber planned her heist during what she thought was the bank's lunch break, not realizing that banks don't close during lunch and that lunch break doesn't mean all employees leave simultaneously. She waited in the parking lot until she thought all employees had left for lunch, then entered the bank to find normal operations continuing with full staff coverage and busy customer service. She asked the teller when everyone would be going to lunch so she could proceed with her robbery, apparently expecting bank staff to coordinate their schedules with her criminal activity timeline. The confused teller offered to check the employee schedule and asked if she needed to make an appointment for banking services. 7. In what might be the least threatening robbery attempt ever recorded, one criminal wore a Halloween mask in February and carried a water gun painted black, creating a costume robbery that fooled no one and threatened no one. His Halloween mask was a cartoon character that made threatening demands sound like children's entertainment, while his painted water gun was obviously fake to anyone who looked closely. The teller initially thought he was performing some kind of community outreach program or children's safety demonstration, until he became frustrated that no one was taking his cartoon robbery seriously. Bank security footage shows him becoming increasingly agitated while dressed as a cartoon character, waving a toy gun and demanding that people take his robbery more seriously. 8. A supremely unprepared robber brought her own pen to write a robbery note, but discovered it was out of ink, so she asked the teller to borrow a pen to complete her robbery demands. The helpful teller provided a working pen, and she wrote her robbery note while engaging in polite conversation about pen quality and ink preferences with the very person she was attempting to rob. Her robbery became a customer service interaction about writing supplies, and she thanked the teller for the pen assistance before attempting to demand money with a note written in the bank's own pen. The surreal interaction continued when she asked if she could keep the pen as a souvenir of her robbery attempt. 9. One robber planned his escape route through the bank's back exit, but discovered that emergency exits are alarmed and that opening them alerts security systems and local police simultaneously. His perfect escape plan triggered every security measure the bank possessed, creating an immediate law enforcement response while he stood in an open emergency doorway, wondering why loud alarms were sounding throughout the building. His escape route became a beacon for police response, and he was arrested in the doorway while alarms announced his exact location to responding officers who could hear the emergency alerts from blocks away. 10. A visually impaired criminal wore sunglasses indoors for her disguise, but the dark glasses made it impossible for her to see clearly inside the bank, causing her to approach the wrong window and demand money from a customer who was making a deposit. Her robbery attempt became a case of mistaken identity when she robbed another bank customer, instead of bank employees, creating confusion about who was robbing whom, while actual bank tellers watched the interaction unfold. The customer she was robbing tried to explain they didn't work at the bank and couldn't access the vault, while she insisted they stop lying and hand over the bank's money immediately. 11. An overly ambitious robber brought a note demanding all the money in the bank, and became increasingly frustrated when the teller explained that most bank money is in time-locked vaults, and that teller drawers contain limited cash for daily operations. He hadn't researched how banks actually store money and expected tellers to have access to entire bank assets like some kind of medieval treasure room. His robbery plan required bank employees to provide money they couldn't access even if they wanted to cooperate, and he became increasingly agitated when told that bank security systems prevent exactly what he was demanding. The situation escalated when he accused the bank of false advertising about containing money. 12. A geographically challenged robber planned her heist for maximum impact, but chose a bank that had been converted into a coffee shop 6 months earlier, spending considerable time demanding money from baristas who explained they only had espresso machines and pastries. Her research was so outdated that she attempted to rob a business that was no longer a bank, and her robbery demands confused coffee shop employees who couldn't understand why someone would expect large amounts of cash from a cafe operation. She became increasingly frustrated when baristas offered her coffee instead of money, and she demanded to speak to the bank manager while surrounded by coffee-making equipment and pastry displays. 13. In an attempt to disguise his voice, one robber spoke in a fake accent that was so exaggerated and inconsistent that tellers couldn't understand his robbery demands and kept asking him to repeat himself. His voice disguise made communication impossible, and his robbery attempt became a language barrier problem when his fake accent prevented anyone from understanding what he wanted from the bank. The teller offered him customer service assistance and language interpretation services, while he grew frustrated that his accent was too convincing and was preventing his robbery from proceeding according to plan. Security cameras recorded him switching between different accents mid-sentence, while becoming increasingly agitated about communication failures. 14. A family-oriented criminal brought her 3-year-old daughter to the robbery because she couldn't find a babysitter, creating a family crime scene that horrified bank staff and customers alike. Her robbery attempt was interrupted when her daughter began crying and asking why mommy was talking to strangers in a scary voice and why everyone looked upset. Bank employees were more concerned about child welfare than robbery demands, and the situation became a family services issue rather than a criminal matter when customers called authorities about endangered child welfare. The child eventually asked if they could go home because the bank was boring and mommy seemed angry at the nice people. 15. An early bird criminal planned his timing around the bank's opening hour, but arrived before employees had unlocked the building and removed overnight security measures. He spent 30 minutes trying to enter a bank that was still in night security mode, with motion sensors and alarm systems that detected his presence before normal business hours and triggered automated security responses. His early arrival activated security protocols designed for after-hours intrusion attempts, and police arrested him outside a closed bank for attempted breaking and entering, while he was still trying to figure out why the doors wouldn't open during what he thought were business hours. 16. A forgetful robber wore a disguise that included her name tag from her regular job at a local grocery store, making her the most identifiable bank robber in criminal history. Her attention to disguise details didn't extend to removing identification that clearly displayed her name and workplace for everyone to see during the robbery attempt. Bank security cameras recorded her name tag information while she demanded money, providing law enforcement with complete identification and employment information before she left the building. Police were able to arrest her at work the next day, where her coworkers confirmed she had left early the previous day for personal business. 17. A mobile advertising disaster occurred when one robber's getaway car was his distinctive custom van with his name, phone number, and business logo painted on all sides for his landscaping company. His mobile advertising became perfect police identification when his commercial vehicle was the most recognizable getaway car possible in the entire city. Security cameras recorded his business contact information during the robbery, and police were able to call him directly using the phone number displayed on his own getaway vehicle while he was still driving away from the crime scene. His landscaping business received numerous calls from law enforcement asking about his availability for prison grounds maintenance. 18. A paper trail enthusiast wrote her demands on a deposit slip with the bank's name, address, and routing information, clearly printed, then left the note with the teller as evidence of her robbery attempt. Her robbery note was written on official bank documentation that connected her crime directly to the specific institution while providing a paper trail for law enforcement investigation that couldn't have been more convenient if she had planned it. Her demand note became a bank document that she voluntarily provided to prosecutors, complete with her handwriting sample and fingerprints on official banking materials. 19. The most unprepared robber in criminal history forgot to bring any kind of bag or container for the money he planned to steal, forcing him to ask tellers if the bank had bags he could borrow for his robbery proceeds. His lack of preparation extended to basic robbery equipment, and his request for money-carrying assistance from bank employees highlighted his complete failure to plan essential robbery logistics beyond the initial demand phase. The teller offered him various bag options, including paper bags, plastic bags, and deposit envelopes, while he explained he needed something large enough for stolen money and durable enough for his escape route. 20. A crowd psychology expert planned her robbery around the bank's busiest time to blend into the crowd, but discovered that crowded banks have more witnesses and that busy periods provide more security coverage rather than less surveillance. Her crowd-blending strategy placed her robbery in front of maximum witnesses during peak security staffing hours, when guards were most alert and customers were most likely to notice unusual behavior. Her timing ensured that her crime would be observed by the largest possible number of people, while security personnel were fully staffed and paying attention to customer activities throughout the busy banking floor. 21. A documentation enthusiast brought his own security camera to record his robbery for personal archives, not realizing that filming crimes provides perfect evidence for prosecution, while creating redundant surveillance footage. His robbery recording created high-definition video evidence of his own criminal activity, while bank security cameras simultaneously recorded him setting up his personal documentation equipment. His robbery became doubly recorded when his personal camera and bank security systems both captured his criminal activity from multiple angles, providing prosecutors with professional quality footage shot by the defendant himself. 22. Perfect timing led one robber to attempt her heist during a fire drill, when all employees and customers had evacuated the building, leaving her alone inside an empty bank with no one to rob and no accessible money. Her timing coincided with emergency procedures that removed all people and secured all assets from the building, creating a robbery attempt with no victims and no accessible cash or valuables. Firefighters discovered her inside an evacuated building, looking for people who weren't there and asking where everyone had gone with the money, while she seemed genuinely confused about why the bank was empty during what she thought was normal business hours. 23. A sentimental robber wore a disguise that included his high school letterman jacket, with his name embroidered prominently on the front, making his identity visible to everyone in the bank while attempting to remain anonymous. His nostalgic fashion choice provided clear identification while he tried to conceal his identity during criminal activity, creating a contradiction between his disguise goals and his clothing choices. Bank employees could address him by name while he demanded money, and security cameras recorded his personalized jacket information for easy identification that made police work unnecessarily simple. 24. Budget constraints led one robber to bring a toy gun from the dollar store that had "toy" molded in large letters on the side, creating the least threatening weapon in robbery history. Her economical approach to robbery equipment resulted in a weapon that clearly identified itself as harmless children's equipment rather than dangerous criminal tools that might intimidate victims. Bank staff immediately recognized her toy gun and offered to help her find the children's section or lost parent services, while she became frustrated that no one was taking her plastic weapon seriously during her criminal demands. 25. A detail-oriented criminal planned his robbery demands around getting specific bills in particular denominations, requiring complex money-counting procedures that took longer than police response times allow for successful escape. His detailed cash requirements turned his robbery into an extended customer service interaction, while he specified exactly which bills he wanted and how they should be organized for his convenience. His precise demands required more time than his escape window allowed, and police arrived while he was still explaining his currency preferences and discussing exchange rates with confused bank tellers. 26. Workplace confusion occurred when one robber wore her work uniform from the bank she was attempting to rob, creating the surreal situation where a bank employee was robbing her own workplace while dressed for work. Her familiar appearance confused customers who thought she was helping with unusual banking procedures rather than committing crimes against her own employer during her scheduled shift. Her colleagues initially thought she was conducting some kind of training exercise or security test rather than actually robbing the institution where she had worked for 3 years and knew all the security procedures. 27. Poor writing material choices doomed one robber when he brought his demands written in pencil, which smeared and became illegible when the nervous teller's sweaty hands made the paper wet and unreadable. His economical approach to robbery supplies meant his demands became increasingly unclear as the paper deteriorated during the stressful interaction between criminal and victim. The teller couldn't read what he wanted, and his penciled demands became an illegible smudge that provided no clear criminal instructions, forcing him to verbally repeat demands that were supposed to be written for intimidation purposes. 28. A financial planning disaster occurred when one robber decided to rob a bank immediately after being rejected for a loan application, but she had already provided complete personal and financial information during the loan process minutes earlier. Her credit application became perfect criminal identification when she immediately committed a crime against the same institution that had extensive documentation of her identity, employment, financial history, and contact information in their computer system. Bank records contained everything law enforcement needed to identify and locate her, and the loan officer who had rejected her application was able to provide her home address from the paperwork she had just completed. 29. Vision problems plagued one robber who wore fake glasses without prescription lenses as part of his disguise, causing him to trip over furniture and bump into walls because the non-corrective eyewear distorted his vision significantly. His disguise accessories created mobility problems that made his robbery attempt look like a vision-impaired person who was lost and confused rather than a dangerous criminal attempting a serious felony. His fake glasses caused more problems for him than they solved for disguise purposes, and bank employees offered to help him navigate the building safely while he tried to demand money. 30. Timing issues trapped one robber who planned her heist around bank closing procedures, but arrived during the 15-minute period when doors were locked, but employees were still inside completing end-of-day security protocols. Her entry timing placed her inside a locked bank during security procedures that ensured no one could leave until counting and vault locking procedures were completed according to banking regulations. She was trapped inside with bank employees who were following procedures that prevented exactly what she was attempting, and security protocols meant everyone had to remain until police arrived to resolve the situation. 31. A fragrance disaster occurred when one robber wore cologne so distinctive and overwhelming that everyone in the bank remembered his scent, making him identifiable by smell rather than appearance long after he left. His excessive grooming choices created sensory identification that made his visual disguise irrelevant when witnesses could recognize him by fragrance alone from significant distances. Police were able to identify him by asking witnesses about memorable scents rather than visual descriptions, and his signature cologne became more distinctive than fingerprints for identification purposes. 32. Mental health considerations led one robber to bring her emotional support dog to the robbery for anxiety management, creating a therapy animal crime scene that confused everyone about the nature of the situation. Her mental health support needs conflicted with her criminal activity when her calming dog made the robbery attempt seem more like a wellness visit than a dangerous crime requiring police response. Bank staff offered pet-friendly customer service while she tried to demand money with her therapy animal providing emotional support, and customers were more interested in petting her dog than responding to her criminal demands. 33. Poor research led one robber to choose the Friday before a 3-day weekend when the bank had minimal cash on hand because most money had been secured in time-locked vaults for the extended closure period. His timing ensured that his robbery attempt would yield minimal returns, because banks systematically reduce available cash before extended closures as standard security procedure to prevent exactly his type of criminal activity. His research failed to account for banking practices that limit robbery targets during predictable closure periods, and he was frustrated to learn that holiday weekends mean less available money rather than more vulnerable security. 34. Language barriers created problems when one robber wrote her demands in a foreign language she didn't speak fluently, creating communication obstacles that prevented anyone from understanding what service she was requesting. Her linguistic disguise backfired when her poor language skills made her demands incomprehensible to bank staff, who couldn't determine what banking service she needed and offered interpretation assistance. Her attempted robbery became a customer service situation where employees tried to provide language assistance for unclear banking needs, and she became frustrated that her foreign language skills weren't sufficient for international crime. 35. Architectural misunderstanding doomed one robber who planned his escape through the bank's drive-through window, but didn't realize that drive-through windows don't open from inside and are designed specifically to prevent exactly his escape plan. His exit strategy involved climbing through security barriers that were engineered to be impossible to breach from either direction without proper authorization. His escape route required defeating security measures that banks install specifically to prevent drive-through robberies, and he was trapped inside while trying to figure out why the window mechanisms wouldn't respond to his attempts to open them from the wrong side. 36. A professional approach confused bank staff when one robber brought a clipboard and official-looking forms, attempting to disguise her robbery as a banking survey or inspection that would provide legitimate access to cash handling areas. Her professional appearance and official demeanor confused bank employees who couldn't determine whether she was conducting legitimate regulatory business or attempting criminal activity disguised as official procedures. Her clipboard and forms made employees uncertain about compliance requirements versus security protocols, and they offered to contact management to verify her authorization for accessing restricted areas. 37. Banking procedure confusion led one robber to plan his demands around accessing the safety deposit box area, not understanding that safety deposit boxes require specific customer keys and that bank employees cannot open individual boxes without proper authorization and customer identification. His misunderstanding about safety deposit box operations led to demands for services that bank employees physically couldn't provide due to security systems specifically designed to prevent unauthorized access to customer assets. He became frustrated when told that safety deposit boxes were inaccessible without customer keys and proper identification, and he accused the bank of lying about their own security procedures. 38. Medical considerations created problems when one robber wore a medical mask and claimed she was immunocompromised. But her health-related disguise drew extra attention from concerned bank staff who offered medical assistance and disability accommodation services. Her medical disguise triggered customer care protocols that provided more personal attention than she wanted while attempting to remain anonymous during criminal activity. Bank employees offered health support services, disability accommodations, and medical emergency assistance while she tried to demand money. And her health concerns became the focus of attention rather than her criminal intentions. 39. Customer service confusion occurred when one robber brought his own security camera footage as evidence that he had been overcharged on previous banking services, attempting to use his robbery as customer service dispute resolution. His customer complaint approach confused bank staff who couldn't determine whether he wanted money as robbery proceeds or refunds for disputed banking fees from previous transactions. His robbery attempt became a customer service interaction about account management and fee structures, and employees offered to review his account history and provide fee adjustments through normal banking procedures. 40. Institutional confusion led one robber to choose a bank location that was actually a credit union, spending considerable time explaining to staff why they should have more money than credit unions typically maintain for daily operations. Her institution confusion led to demands based on commercial bank assumptions applied to credit union operations that function differently and maintain different cash reserves. Her robbery expectations were incompatible with the actual financial institution she had chosen to target, and she became frustrated when told that credit unions operate differently than commercial banks and don't maintain the cash reserves she expected to steal. 41. Sentimental attachment created identification problems when one robber planned his disguise around wearing his lucky hat that had his initials embroidered prominently on the front, making his robbery attempt personally branded criminal activity. His emotional connection to his personalized hat provided clear identification while he attempted to remain anonymous during illegal activity that required concealing his identity. His lucky hat became unlucky evidence when security cameras recorded his embroidered initials, and his personal attachment to the hat made it impossible for him to abandon his most identifying piece of evidence. 42. Family obligations complicated one robber's plans when she brought her grandson to the robbery because she was babysitting and couldn't arrange alternative childcare, creating a multi-generational crime scene that horrified witnesses. Her grandparent responsibilities conflicted with her criminal plans when her family duties made her robbery attempts seem more like family dysfunction than dangerous criminal activity requiring police intervention. Bank staff were concerned about child welfare and family services rather than robbery response, and customers called social services as well as police to address what appeared to be a family crisis involving endangered children. 43. Team loyalty created identification problems when one robber wore a face mask that had his favorite sports team logo prominently displayed, making his fan preferences visible during his criminal activity. His team-branded disguise showed his personal preferences and likely geographic location, while he attempted to conceal his identity from law enforcement and witnesses. His sports loyalty became criminal evidence when his branded mask connected him to local fan bases and team merchandise sales, and police were able to narrow their suspect search to season ticket holders and local sports bars where his team gear would be familiar to regular customers. 44. Management confusion led one robber to plan her heist around accessing the bank manager's office, but discovered that bank managers don't keep large amounts of cash in their offices, and that management areas have separate security systems from customer areas. Her misunderstanding about bank operations led to demands for money from office areas that don't contain cash and personnel, who don't have vault access or cash handling responsibilities. Her robbery plan assumed bank management had direct cash access that doesn't exist in modern banking security systems, and she was frustrated to learn that managers primarily handle paperwork rather than physical money in contemporary banking operations. 45. And finally, the most ambitious failure occurred when one robber planned the ultimate bank robbery spree by targeting multiple banks in sequence during a single afternoon. But his elaborate crime spree was ruined when his first robbery attempt was so unsuccessful that police were waiting for him at the second bank location. His multi-bank strategy assumed that his first robbery would succeed without alerting law enforcement, and that subsequent locations wouldn't be warned about his criminal activity in the area. His criminal efficiency plan created a police notification system that ensured law enforcement would be prepared for his arrival at each subsequent target location, turning his robbery spree into a pre-announced criminal tour where police could predict his next destination and arrange appropriate welcoming committees. His ambitious plan became a law enforcement training exercise in interagency communication and suspect tracking, and he was arrested at his second target before he could even enter the building. Here's what these failed robbery attempts teach us. Crime might not pay, but criminal stupidity definitely costs extra in both legal fees and public embarrassment. These would-be bank robbers proved that successful crimes require planning, intelligence, and execution skills that apparently aren't included in basic criminal education or common sense. The real crime here is that these people thought they were smart enough to outsmart banks, security systems, and law enforcement, while simultaneously demonstrating they couldn't outsmart basic logic or plan simple tasks. Subscribe for more proof that the criminal justice system's biggest ally is criminal incompetence and poor life choices.